Okay, very good evening, everyone. We have quite a number of us in the chat room. Many of you have joined in, right? Thanks a lot. And we have a lot more people joining in live from Facebook as well. So this event is being streamed live from Facebook, okay, as well as a webinar session within close members. All right. So let me introduce myself. My name is K. Gopala. Okay, I'm a council member of the Gopio Business Council. Okay, we are an organization, as you all know, representing the interests of PIOs in Malaysia. And when this MCO happened during the coronavirus crisis, which we are going through now, we started to ideate on how we can add value to the business community in Malaysia, especially the Indian business entrepreneurs. Because as you know, this COVID crisis has affected everyone, not just Indians, but all Malaysians. Every business organizations are going through huge upheavals in terms of their management, in terms of their leadership, in terms of every aspect of their business. Funding, most importantly. And to address this issue, the council, we came up with an idea. Okay, why not we add value to the community by sharing specific knowledge and know-how and information to help our business people to re-energize and revitalize themselves. Because as you might want to admit, we need all the help that we can get. So to help business people, entrepreneurs to navigate through this process, which we are going through now, a series of talks was organized, and we are in a series number 4 now, right? After a few rounds, which mainly focus on the funding availability, on various issues, mental issues, health, and so on. So we have touched a very important, come to a point where we need to talk about management and leadership. All right. So the topic that we have for today is leadership in times of COVID-19 and beyond. So leadership, as you know it, there are many kinds of leadership. And most importantly, we are talking about leadership in organization as well as personal leadership. All right. And how businesses can strategize to face volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, all right? These 4 things are collectively known as VUCA, all right? So you might have heard this term before, VUCA world, VUCA. But what is VUCA actually? Beyond the buzzwords that we all hear. So all of us know what is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, but how does that impact us in our daily lives, in our businesses, and issues larger than that? So to help us shed some light into this a very insightful topic, we have experts, a panel of experts with us. All right, let me go ahead and introduce our panelists. All right, first and foremost, Mr. Doug Dean. All right, he's the head of consulting for OSR Consulting. Doug is a leadership development and strategy expert, and he's a world-class brand builder. With over 30 years of experience in the consulting and coaching industry, including being a chief marketing executive, chief marketing officer for Volkswagen commercial vehicles, vice president of the prestigious Lausanne Hotel School, and an advisor to the Nespresso CEO. Doug has been here, I think he's been here for quite some time, and ever since 2005, he has advised a number of startups, public listed companies, government linked companies on strategic initiatives aimed at increasing companies' performance in an increasingly volatile and uncertain environment by leveraging on agile leadership and agile innovation. So this is a topic which we all need to hear. So we are very happy to have Doug on board. Thank you, Doug, for your time here. Our next panelist is a known figure, okay? He's no stranger to all of us, all right? He's quite a prominent face in Malaysia, especially in the coaching and speaking circuit. Mr. Ravin Rajan, who's the CEO of the Human Capital Asia Group, based in Hong Kong. A prominent speaker with over 20 years of experience in training, coaching, and consulting. Ravin is an author of many books, a motivational speaker, and who was also the first to bring in large-scale open training programs to Malaysia and Singapore. Being a sports physiologist by qualification, he has gone beyond physiology into the mental with in-depth knowledge and understanding of the human potential and behavior modification. Very happy to have you back here, Ron. Ravin Rajan, right? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Moving on, our third panelist is Dr. Tilagawati, who's a senior lecturer in University Malaya. Dr. Tilagawati is a renowned personality in Malaysia, a reviewer and editor for a select number of local and international journals. She's extensively involved in government-funded research projects, which includes impact study and capacity development training as well. And she's also a grant recipient of the prestigious Erasmus Plus project, which covers EU and Asian universities. She's also currently serving as the president of the I-Alumni UKM. Thank you to have you here as well, Dr. Tilagawati. So to start off our discussions, we want to explore further, all right, on this leadership and management issues, especially in times of COVID-19. And I'm going to address the first question to Doug. Doug, this term VUCA, all right, extensively been talked about. We keep hearing about it, but what is VUCA actually? Okay, and how do we as small and medium businesses, right, because most of our audience here are small and medium businesses, and any organization of whatever size, right, how can we understand what is VUCA and how does that specifically impact us, especially in the context of COVID-19, as an example? Doug? Doug, you need to unmute.
Thanks, sorry. Good evening, everyone. Okay. Gopal, in order for us to jump right in, and me as well, if you could pop up my slides, and I'll go into that immediately. So VUCA has been a term that came out of the War College in the US about 25 years ago. And it is an explanation, a clarification on what has happened in the military in terms of going from the Cold War, which was very large forces engaging with each other, to much more of a guerrilla type war. Right, the week after 9/11, VUCA was brought into organizations, to business, and it's remained there. And really, it's a military term by excellence, or by essence. So the word that we're now using, we've updated that. And if you hit me with the next slide, we've taken this from the Oxford Business School, the Syed Business School at Oxford. And we're now changed that as business into TUNA. And TUNA stands for turbulent, uncertain, and the most important word, novel and ambiguous. Novel is the key. What we're seeing in digital transformation, the IR 4.0, et cetera, is a whole raft of novel business models, ways of doing business, et cetera. Like Facebook never existed 12 years ago. Airbnb didn't exist. All of these business models are completely novel. And as a result of that, we need to look at it in that regard. So I use the word TUNA, but the remainder of the evening, the other guest speakers will probably be using VUCA. But I think we need to slowly but surely address the issue of novelty in this context. And I'll be doing that this evening. If you hit me with the next slide. Now, TUNA we've been talking about, or VUCA we've been talking about for quite some time. And we've never really had a perfect example of what that represented. So we talked about 9/11, we talked about this and that. But COVID-19 is actually a fantastic case in point of what TUNA really is in action. And I'll just take you through some of the elements of why that is. Why is it turbulent? Why is it uncertain? Why is it novel? And why is it ambiguous? For example, today, the official statistics are that we have 6,866,309 cases identified around the world. And in terms of deaths, there are 398,551. Those two statistics, we are certain of one thing and one thing only, is that they are wrong. They are wrong in terms of the number of cases by far, and they are certainly wrong in terms of the number of deaths. So this is the official number, super detailed, that doesn't mean anything. That's already an element of complexity and ambiguity that is coming into this. For example, in terms of transmission, we were first told really in January that the element of man or human to human transmission could occur from China. That was really late January for the first time. And then it came in and said, well, it's only through contact, right? Because the size of the virus is such that it really doesn't get airborne very far. So therefore you will pick it up on your hands and you will put it on your face, and that's how you get it. So we believe that, and that's what we worked with. And then doctors and nurses started dying from COVID at a great rate in hospitals because clearly it was aerosol. And then we look at transmission rates and we start seeing transmission rates are far too high to be this contact just off the surface of hard surfaces, and that we transmit it to ourselves. So there is an aerosol component. And just today, WHO has put out new guidelines that we should all be wearing face masks, right? That is brand new today. It's 5.5 months into this pandemic. And only now do we know that we should be looking at aerosol as well as contact. You know, which one is it? And in which proportion? We don't know. And the question is, well, when will we know? Well, we'll know sooner or later, but it will be too late by then, right? This is an element of complexity. We cannot know in the moment that we are in today where we are, what is a cause and what is an effect. And one of the bigger elements is for example, the infection rate. We have multiple data points from the US Navy, from Iceland, from a town in Lombardia, in Italy, et cetera, that are pointing to, we have somewhere between 5% and 50% of the people who have COVID who are basically asymptomatic. If we have 50% asymptomatic, then this idea of aerosol is not really very big. It's probably through contact. If it's only 5%, then aerosol is big. So they're interrelated. They basically depend one on the other. And we don't know which is which. But we know that these two elements could be linked, they may not be. We don't know yet. The infection itself, the pathology of this illness is extremely bizarre. It's so novel, right? First of all, we're told that it was pulmonary, the upper respiratory that would then go to the lower respiratory. So it's like pneumonia. First it started out, it's like flu. No, it's not like flu. It's like a pneumonia. No, it's not like pneumonia. It has nothing to do with pneumonia. And then we got COVID toes coming out about 8 weeks ago. COVID toes is basically a capillary issue. And Kawasaki disease in the children is exactly the same thing. So it's attacking somehow the finer veins, which could also mean that's exactly what's happening in our lungs. So it might not even be the normal issue of pneumonia. There's also this element of taste and smell. About 30% of the victims who get it lose their sense of taste and smell. Smell is okay because that's something that can be blocked, but taste, that's neurological. At least that's what the neuroscientists are saying. So now it's like, well, it could be neurological. And then they're looking at it, so well, maybe the people on ventilators, well, that could absolutely be a neurological phenomenon in the brain stem. And then last but not least, there are people who are dying of embolisms. They also are dying from immune system overdrive. So is this also an inflammation of the body? Is it everything? Is it nothing? Is it all? We don't know. So, and we can go into susceptibility. We can go on even into immunity. Is there no immunity to this? Can you get different versions of it? Is there a long-term immunity? Is there short-term? We don't know. And we won't know for quite some time. Same with the vaccination, et cetera. So this is a perfect example of everything getting mixed up and us not being able to separate the separate threads and how they interlock. That is TUNA, right? And what we're looking at in business is very much that element. And for that, we then need to look at, well, how can we find ourselves in something like this? What are the directions that we can get? And if you hit the next slide, Gopal, next slide, we basically rely on the model that's called the conniving model. Now, two things about the conniving model. First of all, conniving is not spelled and pronounced the same way at all. So that's the first mix up. The second element is that this looks like a very strange model. And it isn't a model, it is actually a topographical map. We are looking at a map, we're not looking at a model. It's very important to know. So conniving is a Welsh term. It means where I am from. It is an indicator of location. And so what I want to spend the next 2-3 minutes about is talking about this map, because this is the key map to everything that we do when we talk about TUNA, VUCA, and in terms of agile leadership or complex adaptive leadership. So we'll start on this map in the lower right-hand corner, which is the southeast, and with the obvious. The obvious is basically a region of this map where really everything can be known. This is a region where a best practice can be established, meaning what? Meaning that cause is always the same effect. So if I do A, I will always get B, right? And this is where then you can set up an SOP, you can set up a practice that will be the best. And in this case, we talk about sensing, categorizing, and responding. And if we move now north, we go into the next, over that hill that's drawn there, and we go into the complicated dimension. Now, the complicated dimension is obviously, as the term says, there are elements where cause is a function of effect. What does that mean? It means that there are multiple ways that you can get the same element. So you can, for example, when you ship an item, right, you can use sea, you can use ground transportation, you can use air. There are different ways of getting this done. And depending on what you have as an input, as a cause, you can get a different response, right? So basically air, yes, it gets there quicker, but it's much more expensive, et cetera. So you can use, in the complicated world, you can use experts, you can use content, knowledge as the basis for your decisions, no issue. So this is a world, the obvious and the complicated world, both that side of our map are worlds that we're used to, that we've been taught about. That's what we're taught in business school. We are the masters of content. We are the leaders through our knowledge, right? You can't be a CEO before you're 45 because you need to have the knowledge and you need to have the exposure. So that's the world of old. Where this map comes in handy is as we move to the west from complicated and we end up in the complex region. In a complex region, cause and effect are intermingled. And I just went through that lengthy explanation of COVID to basically explain the fact that we don't know what is up, what is down, what is causing it, what isn't causing it, how are they interacting. We just basically have to try. We have to try by probing, right? We don't know the answer. I'm going to run this test. I'm going to run this experiment. I'm going to look at these two different segments and try to figure something out. Is there a relationship or isn't there? And so in the complex world, what happens is that we actually have to what's called probe. A way of visualizing this is to think about the oil and gas, right? We don't know if there's oil and gas underground. So we take a machine and we drill in, and then we pull out a core and we look at it, we examine it, we try to figure out from what we're seeing whether or not there's something underneath there. That's exactly the same thing that is happening in all aspects of business now if you are in a complex environment. And the last one, if we move down south now, again, we're in a chaotic situation. In a chaotic situation, it's basically, you just got to get out of there. Chaos would be if you're in a house on fire with your family, you're not going to stand around and say, how volatile is the material here? You know, where is the source of the flame, et cetera. You just get out. And so therefore, in a chaotic world, you act. You don't worry about, there's no cause, there's no effect, you just get out of it. But let me come back up again to the complex, because the complex is really what this is all about, the complex region. There are no answers that we know. So therefore, we are no longer the masters of content. What we have learned may actually be detrimental, because what worked in the past will not work in this environment. So we have to find a whole new way of running our businesses, a whole new way of thinking about how we work. And what I like about this particular rendering, because there are many renderings of the connivan framework, is that this one has this red arc in it. That red arc means that there's a lot of leeway between complex and complicated. And there's a lot of leeway between chaotic and complex. So you can have part of your problem or part of your business is sitting in the complex dimension, and other aspects of the business are still complicated and still there. So we're living in this whole world, we're living in this map all at the same time, but we have to figure out how to work in a complex world. And that's what I want to spend the next bit on, is what do we do? How do you practice this? So if you look The next slide. So basically what this is about is how do we lead when we don't know? And for that matter, we will ultimately know, just like COVID, we will ultimately understand COVID, but it will be too late by then. It will only be in hindsight, and hindsight doesn't help us move forward in a complex environment because it changes all the time. The dynamic is too great. Right? So this is about leading when we don't know. What is the things that we can do? So let me go to the first slide. The first step that you need to do when you're in a complex situation, and this is a situation that we're in today, hit the slide. The slide. Is that we basically have to be honest, and we have to say, I don't know. That is the hardest thing for a leader to say because we're taught to know, and we're supposed to know. And this is a fantastic example. This is Switzerland. It's March 11th. The Swiss government is under all sorts of pressure. There are 1,100 of their citizens that have died. They have made no comments about anything about this pandemic. And right south of them in Italy, in the state of Lombardy, which is still one of the worst epicenters of the disease, people are dying everywhere. And so what happens is the government and the head of government breaks into all medias unannounced and basically says, we have a problem, right? We don't know what's going on, but we promise you that we will do our utmost to find out and we will get everything done as we can. We don't have any solutions right now. So therefore, we're gonna make some mistakes. We're gonna try, we're gonna make some mistakes. Please be patient with us. And the third element is that we're gonna be transparent. We're gonna tell you everything we know all the time. We're gonna come on every day and we're gonna tell you. And that's what's happening certainly in Malaysia, right? Every day we have an update on where we are at, what's happening, who's where, what's going on. And the last one that they say is that we need your help. You need to get involved. You need to basically shelter at home. If you go out, you need to wear a mask, you need to wear gloves, you need to be socially distancing, and you basically need to help us. You need to ensure that we can cover this. That changed the Swiss mentality from one of disorientation, of frustration, of these politicians are lousy, to one where basically they said, we're with you. And Switzerland has turned everything around on the simple basis that they stood up and they say, we don't know, and we need your help. So that's a very powerful, absolutely essential first step. It's something that if you're a leader and you're used to leading from the front, you got to practice in front of a mirror. You got to be ready because Monday morning you're going to have to go in and tell them, I don't know. I don't know, but we can find out. And I need your help to get there. Those are the words that are absolutely essential. That's step number one. Step number two, if you hit the next slide, is basically if we have this map, right, the conniving framework, the question becomes, you know, where is our north? Where do we point our ship? What are we going to do? And there's a very simple solution to that, is that everything you do from this moment forward is about your customers. You have to understand their needs. You have to understand where they're going, what's happening to them, right? Now, in this MCO, in our lockdown period, all of us have been going online and talking to friends and alumni and people that we haven't talked to in a long time. So we're all getting really used to FaceTime and things like this. And my question to you, if you're a business leader, have you been talking to your customers? And if you have you been spending the vast majority of your time with them? The reason is twofold. One is that they will guide you. They are the only direction that you can generate. The second element is that they don't know themselves, so therefore their minds are changing as we go. So you have to constantly be updated and constantly be in contact with them and follow them, right? Key here is, remember, we're in a complex situation. So asking the customers what they're doing, you're not going to get answers because they don't know what they're doing. But together, you can start probing things. You can try things with each other. Now, I've been talking to a lot of our customers in the last month and a half, 2 months, a lot. And what I'm hearing is something else that's very bothersome. Is I hear that the leaders are all sitting around on Facebook, on Zoom or whatever, having these conference calls with each other, trying to figure out how to run the company remotely. That is the worst thing that you could possibly be doing. You have no business trying to run as a leader in a complex situation stuff alone. You need as many people from different opinions and different ways to be able to get to communicate and to work together. You need to open up, don't close down. Don't sit there in a C-level meeting trying to figure things out. You don't know the answers and they don't know the answers. Open up. And then most importantly, talk to your customers. Spend your time with them. They at least have a possibility of giving you directions. That is an incredibly important point. Step number 3 then is that once you have some understanding of the business risks that you, if you can hit the next slide, Gopal. Once you have a better understanding of the risks that are in your business as a result of where your customers are going, et cetera, you need to start identifying and prioritizing your risks and opportunities. And you do this via what this wall looks like, which is Post-it notes, but you can do it also online with Trello or with Slack or any of these other software programs. They basically are built to be for this reason. And the idea here is that you open it up. You bring it in, certainly all of your subordinates and all of your workers, because they have ideas, they have knowledge that you may or may not know. They have perspective. This element is bringing your customers, bringing your suppliers, bringing your network, open up and get ideas so you can understand the risks better. Just don't worry yourself in a corner. It's going out and talking that you'll get this. And you have to prioritize those, because in prioritizing, now you can go to step number 4, which is the next slide. And step number 4 is once you've identified your risks and opportunities, you need to form what we call business sprint projects. Now, we've heard agile projects before, and agile projects and the idea of sprints and scrums and all these terms comes from software development. And they work really, really well when you're developing software and trying to debug software, but they don't work as well when we try to bring it into normal operations. You actually have to transfer and translate the elements of what we call agile leadership and agile projects into business sprints and business projects. And there are a few tools and techniques for that. It usually takes about a day of understanding and training, and then a couple of weeks to rotate through 1 or 2 of these sprints before your organization understands it, and then you can do it on your own. You can learn this stuff on YouTube. It's out there. Google has done a fantastic job. They have basically put all this up online, so you can learn from it also online if you want. But typically we spend about 6 weeks with clients, taking them through, coaching them through this process, because this is the key process to moving quickly and effectively, right? What are these teams going to do? That's the next slide. Basically, these teams are going to be working on next slide is about, now that you have your team, a couple of things have to happen. The first thing is, as a leader, you have to form the team with as much diversity in it as you can possibly get. So take the engineer, take the salesperson, take the operator, take the secretary, take the driver, take whoever you want, who is a different perspective, and put them together. And the number one thing that they have to do as a team is they have to have what's called psychological safety. That is your key metric as a leader to ensure that your team can work effectively. Google did what's called the Project Aristotle. It took them 4 years of internal studies. They looked at 150 teams. They did reams of data. And this is what they came up with, is that psychological safety, if it's in the team, it will work. If it isn't, it will not work. So you have to ensure psychological safety, which is this idea that everyone feels safe to take risks and to say what's on their mind, to be vulnerable to the others, that they'll be heard and that the others will take that into consideration. You know you have psychological safety in your team if and when, at the end of a 1-hour meeting, say with 6 people, each one of them has talked between 5 and 10 minutes. Everyone talks in the psychological safety, and everyone says what's on their mind. That's the key. And then there are 4 other ones, which is dependability, structure in terms of who does what, the meaning of the team, but that's already built into it because you're working on customer-related issues and risks in the business, and then obviously impact. And there's a 6th element that we add to this, and that is diversity. Absolutely key, essential to that. So once you have the team, they're working on their priority, They're now working together. What are they going to be working on? And that's the next slide. That's step 6. You basically have to use the tools and techniques that are out there. This particular tool is used universally. It's called the Javelin board. It is the one that really goes at the key assumptions that you have with regard to having identified the risk or the opportunity. And it's there to bust. You want to bust your assumption. You want to make sure that that assumption is correct, or if it isn't correct, that you kill it, because your idea will never work. So you always go at the key assumption. You do that through the Javelin board. Here again, this information is available on YouTube. There are all sorts of elements of Javelin boards that you can look up and study. So, but that is the most useful tool. We use it all the time in startups, and now it's being extremely useful for businesses in the so-called post-COVID world. Step number 7 is the next slide. The idea behind the concept of a Javelin board is that you need to be looking at building what's called a minimum viable product. You will need to change your offer based on the fact that we're in a complex environment and that your customers have new needs, and therefore there need to be new products and new solutions. But don't build that product from scratch to all the way up to the full model. You have to develop this idea of a minimum viable product. What is the minimum thing that I can build and give in front to my customers for them to try to see if it works for them or not? Keep it low in cost, keep it, how should I say, as simple as possible. And a lot of our clients use like cardboard models, or they use these websites, if you're on an online business, that basically just very basic, but get the key elements of what they're trying to do or trying the message across, and have customers play with it and get reactions. That's your data. That's your probe. A minimum viable product is your probe. So learn about minimum viable products and use them. They're hard to do at the beginning because we always have this concept in our mind. We have to have a finished product to offer to our customers. Not at all. You need just a minimum quality product to be able to, for them to try, because the end product is going to be different than the one that you have in mind. I can guarantee you. Remember, the clients don't know what they need. They know that they need something new. So give them chances to try. Then the next slide. Once you've built your MVPs, what you're looking to do is you're looking to build this, what we call virtuous circle. You build your product and you have to measure the result. You get measurements of the results through the customer journey, their story about how they would use this product, what was useful to them, how would they use it differently, what were the things that were missing, etc. That generates data. That data allows you to learn, and from that learning, you either build a better model, or that learning tells you it's not going to work. And that's what we call doing the pivot. And one of the hardest things to do in this new world is to pivot, because basically we all taught that we love our products. We love what we do. We put all our energy into it, and I have to kill it. I have to move on to something else. That's not cool. But if you look at the very successful startups, they've all pivoted multiple times. Facebook didn't start out to be Facebook. Airbnb didn't start out to be Airbnb. If you look at where they started and where they ended up, two completely different worlds. And that's because they do this build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn. When you go on Facebook, every single time you go on Facebook, something's changed on that page because they're experimenting, right? They moved a button here, they moved a button there. They've changed the background. They've done this, they've done that. Here's another offer. Here's another game. Try this, try that. That's not by accident. That's by the design. And all they're doing is MVP. And they're using you as the feedback loop. Okay, next one then. So basically, the next slide is really this idea of you have to learn to pivot or persevere. When do you give up on an idea? When do you give up on it? And how fast and you know, and what we normally see is that people hold on to their ideas way too long, and therefore they go down this road that's not going to lead them anywhere. Now, to be fair, when you start off with an idea, a new product, a new service, it's going to take multiple iterations. You're going to have to persevere, and sometimes it's very frustrating. but you'll get there in the end if you listen to the client and if you move it with it. So that's basically what you need to do. Very practical, hands-on. This is an approach that works, and this is an approach that will help you get out of this morass. When you're looking at cutting costs, for example, fine, you need to cut costs. I understand that. But don't cut costs just to cut costs. Look at it from the point of view of what can I cut in my costs that won't cost anything to my customer, service-wise, product-wise, quality-wise. You need to preserve those elements. So cut costs from the perspective of the customer, keeping the customer in mind. That's the way that you need to approach all that. So the last slide then for me. Oh, sorry, it's not the last slide. Before last slide is that basically it's talking about your mindset. So what we're talking about when we talk about the Javelin board, when we talk about MVPs, et cetera, is that you need to fail. You will fail. The idea is that you need to fail early, you need to fail quick, you need to fail often, and you need to fail cheap. And that's what the pivot allows you to do. But it is really, really critical that you look at this stuff in a very critical point. About 70, 80% of all ideas will fail. And they will not pass the muster. But every so often you get a few that are able to move forward. Rely on those, build those. Forget about the others. And you need new ideas all the time. You need to be probing all the time. You need to be talking to your customers all the time, right? Every day, all day. So the last slide then, now I'm truly on my last slide, is basically this idea of you need to move from being the leader of content, the master of all, the one who leads from the front only, to really becoming much more of a servant leadership. You don't know. So that's fine. Bring the people together, right? Be humble. Say you don't know. And then work together. And you do that by putting the customer at the center of everything you do. You use teams to develop the solutions that you've identified as potential. You use tools and techniques that are already out in the market that have been proven and that work. Practice psychological safety. And psychological safety is basically everyone feels comfortable expressing themselves. And you do that by practicing it yourself, asking questions, coaching, etc. That's basically it. It's as simple as that and as hard as that. It's not easy to do because it's stuff that we have never been taught. It's not the way we were taught. It's not the way that we think about management or leadership, but it is the only way that we know that is proven effective. And we're learning this from the Googles of this world, from the Microsofts of this world, from the Intels of this world, the people who are still out there and are gathering tremendous speed and volume. Amazon, these people are all using these tools and techniques, and they work at the micro level, at the SME level, as well as at the MNC, the GLCs, etc. It's just a matter of practice and a matter of doing. So that was my part. We'll take, I guess, questions at the end. Please, happy to answer any when we come to it. So Ron, over to you.
Wow, Doug, thanks. That was nice.
Thank you, Doug. Doug, that was quite enlightening. I mean, it seems to me that those tools and platforms and techniques which are traditionally utilized by the top tier companies, the MNCs and the big boys, have now, the smaller players need to actually learn and implement at a rate faster than they can go down, So I think that need is imperative. But one point really stood out, what you, from all the ones that you shared about executives and top-level executives sitting in webinars and closed sessions, talking among themselves, when actually they should be looking outwards and talking to their customers. I mean, that exactly is the point, right? I mean, a lot of the top management, for all the experience and expertise, I mean, are really at loss on how to handle this. Right, so that brings me to ask, Ron, the question. I mean, what is management and what is leadership, in what context should the top executives or whichever size there are, should attempt to approach this new paradigm, of leadership in this VUCA world that we are about to go into, or we all are already living in, right? Ron, probably you can enlighten us.
Thank you, Gopal. That's a question that we have been addressing for last 30 years in consulting training on strategic leadership and management. My topic obviously going to be on how do we lead in times of COVID or in times of VUCA and then beyond, right? So if I can have my slides, I will go straight addressing this. Okay. I was like past 3 days, I was thinking about how to make this very difficult subject sound simple to the listeners, because leadership itself is a very complex, complicated topic. But anyway, then I come across about the word survival, managing the challenges that we are facing now, and then thriving in and even doing great stuff out of these challenges. So, so then I remembered when we were young in Kampung, our hometown villages, we boys used to go to the river and swim. And many times the new members of our gang, yeah, we used to learn how to float, how to swim, how to dive, and all those stuffs in the river, right? So I wanted to use that analogy of swimming in the river uh, compared to what we are facing in our real life now. Okay, so if you are swimming in the river, not in the lake or swimming pool, these words like drowning, floating, swimming becomes relevant. You don't want to drown, you need to learn how to float, and then you need to learn how to swim. That is the simple three things you need. Stay afloat and swim. To survive in this river of VUCA or the COVID situation, we must learn how to survive, to float. Basically, if somebody is already surviving, you can follow them. Somebody know how to float, follow them. But we are not going to talk about just how to follow. We are talking about how to manage and then lead, right? So swimming against the current or with the current is what is all about. So I somehow felt strongly that if you follow the current, you swim, follow the current of the river, you are just managing. Yeah, you are managing the journey with the current of the river. But if you go against the river, against the current of the river, that's where I think leadership comes in. So if you look at the slide, the next slide, okay, uh, you can see I have, based on the current situation, I have come up with these differences between managing and leadership, where if you are just managing, not only floating or surviving, you are going with the flow. You just have to do your job, uh, and it's your duty. So to survive your job, you just have to continue doing, following the SOPs, addressing immediate needs, short-term objectives, and you don't think about long-term strategies, what our vision for next 5 years, because you're going through a situation now, and then implement things based on the system we already have. You make sure you control and monitor everything. You need real-time data, and most of the time, just like what Doug said just now, there are many proven techniques and tools available, proven solutions. Use those and avoid risk. You minimize risk because you really do not know what is next. Is ambiguity and uncertainty. But when it comes to leadership, you want to go against the current. You just don't want to follow everyone else, because following everyone else is like following the 90%. You want to be novel, you want to be different, you want to be innovative. So you have to take the path of leadership, which is against the current, right? So here you need something more than just managing contacts. You need to be very purposeful. And the purpose usually is you're helping others to do things for a bigger target audience, not just yourself need. And need to be not short-term oriented, but future-oriented, long-term directions. And then you need to change, you need to innovate, and you need to try a lot of new solutions and ideas. That's where the agile or the sprint projects comes in. And then you need to engage and inspire your people. You have to work with your team. You need to explore and experiment. You need to probe. You need to try things that nobody have thought of, kind of thing. So your past knowledge, your MBA may not support you. You have to experiment a lot of new things. And that comes a lot of risk. If you go for the next slide. So you can see leading and managing can be two different things. And looking at the landscape now, we are not just going to go against the current of the normal river or just float and go with the current, because the river is now having flood. Rivers flooded, so there is a huge torrent coming down the river, and it creates kind of like a storm, right? Why I call it a VUCA storm? Because all those things that we talk about, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, is on steroid now. Why? Because we don't have one crisis we are facing the world now. We have three different kind of crises. Number one, we already last 5 to 10 years, we already face what we call the IR 4.0 revolution. It's an industry and technology revolution. We all know about it, IR 4.0. Number two, we had military and military and economic geopolitical competition. Not only between US and China, we have India coming in, Russia, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka, Middle East. Everyone is in competition, and we almost have World War III started, kind of thing. And then the third part, we have this coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic. It's a global pandemic causing economic collapse, right? And we have a negative 3% GDP shrunk globally. So all three happen at the same time. It's a perfect storm. Perfect storm. So this is a moment of truth. Are you going to float? Are you going to swim? Or are you going to do something so different to survive? Are you going to just survive, manage the situation, or are you going to lead? That's the question. But then there is another problem. When your life is threatened with this kind of pandemic, your psychologically, you will go into the kind of survival instinct, we call it, self-preservation, where fear normally paralyzes the brain. And you cannot think, you cannot plan, and you will not act normal. It's a neural hijack situation. So when 7.7 billion people go into this fear paralysis, how do you lead them? How do you manage? How do you yourself individually try to manage or lead? This is why leading in the time of war or crisis is very challenging, individually or even to lead others. So in the studies of management, we have many situations where we call it borderline condition, where you can see left and right in this normal distribution curve. You have this 10% condition where one is crisis, on the right is if your organization or your environment, you're trying to lead towards greatness. This is where leadership comes in. So leadership is very much needed on the 10% condition, or borderline condition. And I would like to talk about how do you manage, how do you lead in crisis situation, right? Next slide, please. Okay, so on the VUCA, theoretically, this is very much a textbook kind of answer. Theoretically, if it's volatile, like a storm, you do not know what will happen next, you basically use the agile strategy, be adaptive, be flexible, try everything, embrace change. Change is or pivot. You must love to pivot, Doug says. You must embrace change, think out of box, innovate. Yeah, think out of box. For uncertainty, let's say in the dark, you do not know how to predict next. What is, you see, past results cannot be used to predict future because of uncertainty. So, but then we have AI, we have big data, we can learn quickly, learn all the time. Continuous learning helps. And then you need to probe and analyze and continuously take this learning, empower people to learn, empower your team, and empower learning by the team. When everybody learn quickly and together, you can actually manage this uncertainty a little bit better. And complexity is very much like human relationship. You need to um, devolve. Don't get too involved because that will complicate things more. Let go of control. Say, admit, just like what Doug says, admit that you don't know. Get people involved, inspire them to get engaged to solve the problem together. Simplify things and use your wisdom or gut feeling. This is where the people factor comes in, EQ. Yeah, leadership got a lot to do with heart, not just the brain or rational thinking. So complexity can be managed with human relationship, especially on emotional intelligence. And finally, ambiguity is where you need to act on what is known and gain new knowledge, research. The customers knows best. Frontline people know a lot of things. They are on the ground. Empower them, right? This is normal textbook answer. And then we have all these tools and technologies available. Internet of Things, IoT, generational difference of Gen Y, millennials, they are clever. They are golden generation who can solve many of these new problems and solutions. And then there's a lot of smart things happening now. So embrace some of this new technology, 5G and all that. E-commerce platform is a great business model. Platform revolution is coming and it's sweeping across the globe. So we need to embrace e-commerce and then platform revolution for it. Social media and gamification is a way to go. Cloud computing and big data and AI, all this comes in, right? So these are some of the technology and tools that we can go in. Next, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so here I have differentiated how do you manage to survive or lead for transformation. So I've talked about this in a previous webinar, but let me quickly say this. Basically, if you are in a storm or in a spinning wheel, the center of the wheel or the eye of the storm usually is very calm and that is where I think we need to center ourselves, stay calm, slow down, don't rush into the storm. And in fact, some businesses I will advise you to hibernate. Don't do anything now. Don't spend your little money left. Wait for the storm to pass. That can help you to survive. Or cut costs, minimalistic approaches to whatever you're doing, and reduce workforce, be lean and mean in the way you approach your business. This will help you, reduce and minimalize. Then come together as companies in the industry and then support each other in the industry. Like I see the airline industry and the tourism industry. All the hotels are closing down. They're up for sale. it's a time that you come together in your associations and explore how you can work together. Now, when we are faced with a common enemy or problem, the whole village should come together and find better solutions together. And then increase efficiency to increase your margin, and then expand your reach or your market. Use online marketing if you can. Sometimes it works, yeah. So those are some of the managing for survival. But when it comes to leading for transformation, this is where you need to be a bit more daring, courageous, to embrace all possibilities, understand the future. The future is not going to be the same that we used to know. And then read this book, Platform Revolution. So because everything going on platform, just like this webinar now, right? And embrace new technologies like AI, IoT, big data, blockchain, machine learning, name it. There's thousands and thousands of things, new things which is already in the market. Go global. Don't look into your past or current customers. That's not enough. Reach out to other countries and other regions. Go across country, across industry, sorry, and work with other industries and how we can find new market. Yeah, collaborate with them. Take this opportunity to reinvent your business. Last 20 years, you may have done something very successfully. This is a time. This is an opportunity to look into other ways of doing the same business or new business, and create own rules. Don't play by the rules because those old rules are changing by itself. So create a new world and explore. Take this opportunity, slow down and reinvent, right? So my final slide will be, yeah. Can I have the final slide? Okay, in a nutshell, just imagine this COVID situation is like a flood storm where we need to avoid drowning, stay afloat, and learn to swim. Either you go with the current or against the current. So surviving is important. Float, manage, that is equal to not leadership, that's followership. If you want to lead, swimming against the current, you want to explore new opportunities. Number one, have clear purpose, not direction or targets. Have clear purpose. Make your business more meaningful. Think long term, actually. Yeah, these changes that you're making now must be long term. Next 5 years, 10 years, even 20 years. Think for greater good of the world, the people, the community, and the industry. Don't be selfish because people who are selfish cannot lead because nobody will follow. You need a team. You need people to actually inspired by your leadership. So think about for greater good and don't follow. Lead. How do you do that? Challenge the status quo. And courage is important. Please reduce your fear about what's happening or what is coming. Have courage to take risk and embrace the opportunity that comes with the risk. And try new things, be more innovative, be novel, explore new ideas. Sometimes, as Doug said, 80% will fail, 90% will fail. But those who succeed, those ideas will be billion-dollar ideas. And finally, you will emerge victorious out of this storm. And this too shall pass for those who are struggling and suffering. And victory is sure in the horizon. Okay, I'd like to thank Gopal and Gopio for giving me this opportunity. We shall survive and thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ron. As always, very insightful, very precise, and but it seems to me from what you have, I've been listening to you, and not only this, a few other talks that you have been doing. I mean, what is needed now? It seems to me that it's not only a huge mindset shift, right? Not only the mindset shift, but also the strategy or the aggressiveness of action must take place, either to manage or to lead. right? So these are two different paradigms, and I think a lot of business people are caught in between. I mean, they know what they should do because I'm sure they've been attending enough seminars, webinars, and so on. But the action, there are a lot more implications, and then in that process, we always forget, or entrepreneurs always forget. Apart from their organization, they themselves are the most important component in any organization, because if you don't have a person to lead, I mean, you don't have, I mean, the head, anything goes wrong with the head of the company, then you don't have anything to manage nor to lead. So that brings me to the next speaker. All right, Doctor, I mean, self-leadership, that's one topic that, I mean, always gets thrown in the sideline because the focus have been too much on the organization level. So, how important is self-leadership in managing this crisis, and especially in the context of you know, women, family units, children, and so on? And what is the impact, and how should leaders you know, would need to address this issue? Your take on that, Doctor? You need to unmute, Doctor. Unmute it.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. I will start off from where Revin left off. He said about swimming just now. So, you know, swimming itself tells you that no one else can swim for you. You have to swim yourself. So whatever the, you know, the processes, whatever you have learned, it has to be your own. So your own initiative, you need to take the lead. As long as you have this fear, you will drown. If you think you will drown, you will drown. So you need to take lead of yourself. So I'd like to start with my first slide. So while Gopal is trying to put that on, I would like to talk about my particular topic today. So it is something very important that people you know, understudy. They do not research about this too much. So I would like to first draw on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, number 8 especially, where you by 2030 you are supposed to achieve full and productive employment and decent work for all women, men, the young people, and persons with disabilities. And we are supposed to also encourage the formalization and growth of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises and a decent job for all. But what happened was in 2020, okay, now currently we have a faceless enemy that has decided to show us a new normal. So all these aspirations and goals that have been actually put in place has now taken a new turn. So we are looking at prolonged lockdown. Initially, even when at home, taking this opportunity to have family time, etc. But you know, people you know, were affected. So people watched, they waited, and then they became restless. So prolonged lockdown took its toll on many of these micro enterprises, and people like the farmers, the traders, daily wage earners, they were all you know, facing a lot of problems. And so you can already see that you know, hotels are closing businesses, you know, the service sectors are facing problems, the industries, you know, so many things are, you know, really you know, in a difficult situation. You know, lately I watched a video on Dubai, and you only see 2 men sitting in the gold soup. Okay, I love gold, so you know, in the gold soup, so you have only 2 men, you know, the ones who are selling, the salesmen were sitting there. So the numbers actually speak for itself. If you take unemployment, for instance, there are already 600,000. You know, you find that the unemployment rate has also gone up from 2010. Now, you know, it has gone up to 3.9%. So you find that a lot of this has affected the trade, and also recession. I was talking to a banker the other day, and recession is expected to hit sometime in July, August, I'm not sure how it is, but this is the expectations when I talk to them. And they say that the GDP might even go dip down to -2. So -2% is quite, impactful. Okay, can I have the next slide, please? So UN has classified women as a vulnerable group. So my question is, are women correctly categorized as being vulnerable, or are they being made vulnerable since they are faced with a lot of personal decisions? Agents, they have restrictions in, on mobility. There's prevention from, taking on some leadership roles, for instance. And according to our Gandhi ji as well, Indian women, for instance, their high dependency on men is actually attributed to the socio-historical experiences. But I would also like to add cultural experiences as well, because it is through socialization that women, okay, even Asian women, are very dependent on men. So I feel that we have been made vulnerable, right? So we move on to the so let's look at the slides here, the slide here, and if you look at the pictures that I've uploaded here, everyone has a meaning. You can see that the lady on the right is trying to do something to change the tire, and even I can't do that. Okay, so me to do it. So, I never actually learned to do it, but, in circumstances where you have to do it, you have to do it. And then you have, since I'm a lecturer, I also have this problem getting students online. That is why, sometimes I go offline because my voice might be lagging. So if you look at this is a Kerala report where, scaling new heights is really not scaling that kind of a heights, but putting her life, on end, just because she has to attend an online class. So educating herself. She knows how important it is to educate herself. Okay, Gopal, can I have the next slide, please? So everyone is now facing what we call the VUCA challenge. So Doug and also Ravin, they have talked about the VUCA challenge. Now, while I talk about this, I also want to give a kind of solution to it, or how you can mitigate this challenge. Just to tell you on the lighter side, music challenge, storybook challenge, and then movie challenge. What is it? Okay, so a lot of challenges, but what about the VUCA challenge then? So it's an unprecedented crisis, and we are facing this volatile situation. We are uncertain about a lot of things, and there's a lot of complexity and ambiguity in the way we are dealing with things. So we are mostly overwhelmed with the lockdown, and we are faced with various challenges. And one of the biggest challenge first was as if we had death threats every day from this faceless enemy. And as time went on, jobs were lost, job displacements took place, schools and childcare facilities were also closed, and that added another burden to the women. As you can see in this picture, it is the women who take the kids, they take care of these children. Now, besides working from home, they also have to another new concept now. And it's amazing how I find that we have lived with this new normal, and so we don't really need to go to the cinema. We don't have to go and dine out, because people are doing it already here. So what we have done is we have adapted to this challenge. So I would say that this has also caused a lot of uncertainty in terms of unemployment, which is the biggest problem among people these days. So lives and livelihoods are already affected very severely. Even senior level management have been given VSS. So these are all from what I have heard from close friends, and also the environment, the VUCA environment has meant giving a significant rise in adaptive challenges. I would like to add here that women and girls live the pandemic differently because they have disproportionate burdens of care and time that is available in their hands. So even now, when I am talking here, I have to make sure that the family is taken care of. At the same time, I also want my work to go on. But what has happened is my boss now sort of feels that time is, you're at home, so time is like timeless. I can call you for meetings, so I can, do things with you. And students do the same thing. They message at odd times because we are trying to adjust to this, new normal. And women are further burdened now. The childcare and babysitting centers are all closed, so increased burden with childcare responsibilities. I was telling my family, I have actually, been cooking every day, etc. So talking about adapting to changes, yeah. So I also found, one of the very important things is babysitters and hairdressers should be classified now as essential services, because really that is one of the most important things that all of us are looking forward to. So in the face of a VUCA environment, women juggle modern challenges of life while playing traditional feminine roles. So this is something real, and in order to overcome this challenge, women must be agents of change. Now, having looked at some of the newspaper reports also, we have to also remember that some women face domestic violence and they are helpless because support services have now other priorities, that is to combat the COVID-19. So women must be the agents of change. They must have clarity of vision. So in a volatile situation, they must have vision to tackle volatile and plan things, change the uncertainty to understanding, seek to understand, act with respect always, consult others, listen to others, review and make informed decisions on actions, and change the complexity to something that is clearer. So clarity is important to ensure transparency in the information that you share. You have to make sure there is mutual trust between everyone, and changing ambiguity to agility, because you need to be able to move quickly with the times. So, there was a question just now, what kind of jobs can we actually look at? So if you, so she asked, besides hygienic products, masks, etc., what else? Because those people who have been agile, they have taken the first step and they've gone ahead. So if you take your time to make decisions, you take your time to make plans, you delay your actions, environment even further. So there has to be some direction, there has to be some responsibilities, and you also need to co-empower others, because we don't live in a world alone. We have to depend on others as well. So codependency, co-construction of the situation. We have to empower others besides leading ourselves as well. So women need to empower themselves and self-lead. So that comes to the next slide, where I will talk about what self-leadership is. So self-leadership really refers to being self-aware, setting goals for yourself, honoring yourself, which is really very important, because we have to love ourselves to be able to lead others. And we have to be actively rejecting pessimism. So when people put you down, when people pull you down, you have to be the change, okay? Show people the change that you want the world to see. And you also want to as well. So these are very important things that self-leadership is. It's about empowering yourself through leading yourself. So coming to the next slide, I will talk about the 4 pillars of self-leadership. So, Gopal, can I have the next slide? So the first one, okay, is self-discovery. So first we have to understand ourselves. Naturally, all of us have our own sets of beliefs and values that make us who we are. We have some guiding principles, we have some approach to life and in our relationships as well. So when we discover what makes you tick, you need to know what it is, okay? What energizes you, what you believe in, and then you start living for that. So as long as you live in other people's shadow, you do not know, what energizes you, then, you have to live out of it. So first and foremost, what is your interest? What do you spend your time on? So if you are a person, there are virtual jobs available. There are plenty. So I'm answering this question just now. If you spend a lot of time, or you're good in drawing, then you can be graphic designers. If you're good in language, for instance, you can be editors, proofreaders, you can be writers. I have my yoga instructress who has now gone online as well. So if you're into exercising, for instance, you can also take on online yoga classes. You can also be social media managers, for instance. People do not have time. Now everything is online. So you can be virtual assistants as well. So you don't really need, experience to do that, as long as you are able to manage and you're able to, manage, the timetable or whatever. You can go virtual to gain jobs. So we also need to look at women with no experience, women with primary level education or lower secondary education. And so how do you practice self-acceptance? So self-acceptance means be completely honest with yourself, accepting without self-criticism. We are always, quick to share, to say everything negative about ourselves. We say, we're not progressing fast. When am I going to get my promotion? I'm totally drained. I have so much work to do. I can't cope. I'm not capable of this, etc., etc. I have a fear of this. What will people say? People say, why don't you talk about how you feel, what you can do? So self-acceptance is something very important, and you must be able to recognize when things are not going your way. Okay, understand that in you. What is your part that you can't move? What are your flaws? But recognizing the flaws itself is enough, but don't wallow in that flaws, but focus on the strength. What can come out of the flaws, and how can you strengthen or meet living the imperfections and accepting where you are right now. And that brings me to the third pillar, the self-management. So leaders who can self-manage are more productive. They are more focused, they are able to work independently, and also self-management means to be self-disciplined. So holding yourself accountable, managing your time, energizing yourself, using the resources effectively, and then maintaining a good balance and prioritizing the right things. So it isn't about overworking. We have to manage our time. We need to know, like now, I've been given this platform to, say my piece on self-leadership, so I've taken that. So manage your time and use the resources that you have, and but don't push yourself too hard. So having self-awareness and understanding, what you have, what habits you have, how can you reduce your, not so desirable habits. For instance, now, of course, we are social media. People are always on the phone. So when you do that, you divert a lot of your focus and you have less quality time to do your work. So self-management also means controlling your impulses and putting what is most important. So self-awareness would always trigger your behavior, and it applies self-management to remain calm and centered. And so I come to my last pillar, the self-growth. Here, self-growth refers to personal growth. So personal growth, it isn't about self-criticism, but it is about recognizing what you're doing. So is it that you're doing, what isn't working, what is working, how can you make positive changes, and also continuously trying to improve yourself. So learning also how to embrace failure, because failure is the platform in which you can, do better. So when you recognize the failure for learning, the opportunity will provide itself for you to flourish further and succeed faster. And social intelligence, I think Ravin brought this up. So emotional intelligence is about self-mastery. So how we handle ourselves, being aware of our feelings and also our passion, how we can manage our emotions and not let anything disrupt our focus or reflect, empathize and recognize other people's emotions at the same time, their feelings and how they are and how they see things and interact with us as well. And social intelligence refers to listening to others, being able to get others to say, listen to others, get others to say what they have, and then share their knowledge, and then putting it all together to a higher order integration and putting your own plan in motion. So here, empathy is very important. So what it is like strategizing, listening from everyone, picking from a lot of things. And I'm going to show you an example how a lady in a B40 category did this by listening. So your six senses, your listening sense, your sight, it has to be very sensitive. So you have to go beyond what it is. And so you have to reboot thinking. You have to reboot your thinking, and you have to engage with yourself. You have to rise above the crisis. You have to manage your social parameters that you're placed around you. Break the chains that bind the self. And so moving on to the second last slide. Okay, so here is the example of the lady that I was talking to you about. She created this. So she started making masks that were reusable. So, it's not the throwing one. This is exactly from the one that she shared with us. So she actually showed this, and she had colored masks. She has a bit of fashion sense there. She also showed the different types of masks that she actually stitched. So we run our tailoring course, and she came up with this. We teach her sari blouses, but she came up with a mask because she is adapting to the challenge at the time in which the pandemic was in its rounds. And then she even has a disclaimer at the end. She said that this is not endorsed by the ministry. Bring it just by selling her mask. So isn't that empowerment? Okay, and I go to my last slide. So what it has shown us is that we need to reflect, we need to strategize what we want our life to be, and realize the fragile nature of our existence. But life is the most difficult exam. Many people fail because they try to copy others, not realizing everyone has a different question paper. So educate yourself. And I would like to talk about how Gandhiji says, when you educate a man, you only educate that man. But if you educate a woman, you educate an entire family, an entire nation, in fact, okay? So developing a better sense of self is incredibly important, and you must navigate difficult situations with less stress and overcome negative emotions. And so a high level of emotional intelligence is really required. And I like to end my talk today by quoting Lao Tzu, and he says, mastering others is strength, but mastering yourself.
Thank you, Doctor. I think we lost you a bit on your quote, but
Okay, but it's there for you, yeah?
Yeah, there's a lag, and we can look back at it at a later point. But on that note, thank you very much, esteemed panel members. And we will go on to take some questions from the floor. I think there were a lot of questions coming in the moment. There was one question by Ms. Kali Chelvi. I think, Doctor, you addressed it,
Yes,
and the panel
yes.
list out specific opportunities, right? So I think that our doctor already addressed this question. We have a question by Dato Tangga Velu, right, who is the current president of the Malaysian Indian Tour and Travel Association. All right. His question is, VUCA is an unprecedented crisis. Airlines have declared bankruptcy. Hotels started closing. Travel and tourism industries are in a dilemma. what is the future of this industry, and what type of leadership is advisable for the tourism industry? Right, it's quite an interesting question. Would Doug, would you be okay? Revin, right? Got it.
Okay. You just muted me. Thank you, Gopal. Okay. Very good question, which actually shows the nature of our current crisis, which is a perfect TUNA or VUCA condition. It's not only unprecedented, it is we are not certain or uncertain about what exactly is happening and where is it going to head, right? Uncertain about the future. Okay, simplistic answer will be just what most of the other industry are doing. They are just capitalizing the opportunities available in this risky or crisis moment. But it's not possible for most of the industry players. For example, airline, you can't do much. Tourism, nothing, zero basically. Who's benefiting? No, not even one organization can benefit from this shutdown, global shutdown. So I will suggest this is the time that, for example, a tour operator, this is a time that they need to explore, minimize losses. That's the first thing you need to float. You need to cut down all your expenses, minimize the operation, and try to stay in business, even just have the business going without the operation. That's the first thing we need to do. We need to quiet, slow down, and hibernate. Try to survive. Number two, do some research, do some rethinking, do some innovative, think out of box. For example, there's this thing called virtual tour. Let's look into that. Explore is some of the tour businesses can go virtual, go online. There are things that we can sell, the souvenirs that we used to sell in the tourist tour places, we can now sell online after the virtual tour. So there's a new way of doing the same tourism business. We need to rethink and innovate. That is one option. Secondly, everybody's talking about new norm and this as if this is going to be like continuously like this. No, we had so many recessions, depressions, economic depressions, and also pandemics. We will come back. We will do bigger and better than this. So don't think that we have to follow this new norm. No, we're going to have more businesses after this. And that is what, give at least 18 months. We will be economically much bigger and much more active. So be prepared to capture those opportunities, right? There is a saying that you need to slow down to pick up speed. So that's what I would like to say. Not immediate answer or solutions. Thank you.
All right. Okay, that's a very great answer. As they say, there's an opportunity in every crisis, and there's also big opportunity after a crisis. So the light will shine, and we have to wait, and position ourselves. So we'll go on for the next question. This is a question for Doug. Yeah, Malaysian SMEs will not have the funds nor the time to do all that you have proposed. Considering that the bulk of SME employees look up to their bosses for solutions and leadership. And as said, consultants take at least 6 weeks to implement such strategies in a company. Time is not with the SMEs now. How can local SMEs adapt fast to move forward? Question is by Setiaga. Thank you, Setiaga.
Tiago, thanks for the question. Basically, I do have to completely disagree with you that if you look at an SME you have to look at every employee has a perspective. Every employee has some sort of input. If you allow them to just sit around and say, but boss, you're the boss, you have to do, and I am just here, I'm getting my salary, that is just completely and utterly unacceptable. Everyone has something to contribute. You have to ask for that. You have to go for that. But it has to be you that has to do that. You have to basically lead by example in this case. In terms of the innovation, to bring a new product from zero into the market, it takes time. What the sprints are meant to do is within a period of 1 week to 1 month. It depends on the quality of the data that's required and how deep you need to go. But typically, a sprint will take about a month to do. And that is from beginning to end. So each week you have a specific element that you need to complete. But again, it depends on the risk and on the opportunity that you're exploring. What has happened traditionally is that you take months and months and months, 6 months to a year to bring out a new product. That type of time is gone. So if you can't do it within 2 months, you've already missed the boat. And this is particularly true for online businesses. As I said earlier, if you have an online business, you have to be experimenting with that online business every day, about 4 or 5 different tests being run on it, trying something, a new product line, trying a new area to display the products in, doing this, doing that, doing all sorts of social media. Some will work, some won't. Why do some work? Why does? So you have to have always these A and B products going. So it's an ongoing, multiple elements at once. You just have to be careful that you don't confuse everything and you can't then read the data that comes off the back end of it. If that makes any sense. But I have an enormous, so we have had actual businesses that have been saved by sweepers. People who have seen things because of the fact that every day they're in the factory doing elements that others ignore. And that through them, you're able to see certain things. Everyone has an input. Drivers are a fantastic source of information, as are secretaries, etc. So this idea that, we're too small, no one has any ideas, is because they haven't been explored. It's really, really important that you tie into everyone's perspective and bring in the clients, bring in suppliers, bring in your network, bring in talk to everyone. Everyone has ideas. Don't limit yourself to yourself and thinking that you run the business alone. That's simply, if you do that, you are destined to fail.
Yep, okay, that's a great message there, Doug. Talk to everyone, don't do everything by yourself. Okay, that's a good takeaway. We're going to take some questions from our Facebook Live audiences as well. We have an interesting question coming from Miss Sarina. Right, we are mentally disturbed with all these happenings. What could be the best step to move forward in our lives? Probably, Doctor, you can take this question from Miss Sarina.
Okay, so what's the question again?
We are mentally disturbed with all that is happening. What could be the best step to move forward in our lives?
All right. Very simple. The first step maybe, talk to your friends. Okay. We have a lot of social media now. We have Facebook, we have chats, we have a lot of things, and the support system is great if we reach out to people. The university had somebody who passed away during the lockdown, and people didn't even realize. So obviously, there was no communication with this particular person. So the key to this is to communicate. You see, where everyone is in different situation, we cannot say that all of us face the same thing and we are all going through the same thing. Women go through it in a different way because, as I said, we juggle modern day challenges with the very, traditional feminine roles, and we juggle a lot of things around us. So you have the single, woman, who works right through, and then you have the ones who are married, the ones with kids to take care of, childcare, so many things. So you have similar people in that situation. So All you need to do is to reach out. So, you know, if you go through, there are people who are actually doing very supportive things like what I told you just now, challenges, challenging you to, you know, look up, you know, what is the that you are actually looking through and, you know, picking out the ones that you really like. It's like going through yourself and picking out things that you like. And when you share, people comment. So that's how you grow. Start with yourself first. I think that's how you should actually start.
Thanks. Thank you, Doctor. I think Mr. Revin, you have a take on this?
Yeah, this is a very important question. That's why I wanted to answer. Number one, we realized just now in my presentation that I said that this particular pandemic is causing fear that paralyzes the people. It has two effects to the brain. One, it neural hijacks into a panic state of survival instinct. So basically, fear makes you go into this fight or flight mode. That is where you can't think and you can't plan. The second thing, fear, also this panic mode, when you have mental disturbance, kind of the question by Sarina is mental disturbance, this panic mode actually reduces your immune system, right? Which causes you to actually get worse with your illness, especially with the viral attack. So if we remember two things that we basically do when you have a chicken pox in the Indian tradition, the family come together and supports you. They give you not only treatment, but a lot of care and love, a lot of mental and psychological assurance. That is important. But how the world reacted to this current pandemic, we isolated the patient and let him die alone. That depression will kill worse than the virus, right? So I look at this mental disturbance a very serious thing in us responding, not reacting, responding to this pandemic. Same with the businessmen. We lost money. We lost our business. We lost our customers. We lost our future. We lost all our saving. That will push us into panic state too. So we need to avoid this reaction at all costs, because it will make things worse for us. Not only make us sick and vulnerable for this disease, it will make us worse into responding to this moment of crisis. So we must reduce fear. How do we do that? To answer Serena, there's only two ways that mankind knows how to avoid fear. One, you need to depend on higher power. You see, at this moment, to master courage and bravery and self-talk, positive mindset, all that will not work. Because the moment you go into neural hijack, you're gone. You know, it's very difficult to think positive when you are in a panic state. So normally what people do, pray to a higher power. So I don't care what spiritual or religious practice you have, pray. Psychologically it works. Yeah. So you need to, that's why in a chickenpox situation, the Indian tradition, they do everything linked to religion, prayers, because it gives you the extra thing, extra power. Pray. Second thing is calm your brain by meditating. So important. The normal medicine, allopathy, do not talk about this, but the ancient traditional alternative medicine is all about this. The mental health is more important for your immune system than any medicine or antibody. Vaccine won't help. Sorry for saying that. Your immune system is directly linked to your mental health. Meditate. Stay calm. Go inside your mind. Go inward. These are ancient and traditional way of healing. If we are just trying to take all these relaxant and all these psychotropic kind of medicine, that's very temporary solution. We need to strengthen our immune system. So it's very serious. Many research papers are out now, especially from China and India, on this mental health linked to the immune system in the COVID pandemic situation. Thank you, Serena. Very good question.
Thank you, Ravin. I'm sure Sarina and much more than her will find your answer very helpful. In lieu of time, I'm going to take one last question. But I'm going to just quickly point out a question by Mr. Sam, who said that what businesses can we diversify and venture during this pandemic? I think some sort of an answer, I mean, this question has been addressed by the panel, but also the answer is by Mr. Kalichalvi is in response to Mr. Sam, I think. There's one serious business opportunity. I think Mr. Sam, she has provided a solution for you. You might want to explore, get in touch with Ms. Kalichalvi. So I'll just go to the last question for the night. By Mr. Thiru, Mr. Thiru Karpeya. Can you name a few corporate leaders who have set a role model for us at times like this? Leaders who seem great in good times are crumbling. So, is there anyone who's doing it right in this COVID times? Is there any leader or somebody who's like showing the world that this is the way to do it? The panel?
Doug,
you may take first, then I will come in.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. The guy who's in charge of Microsoft, the Indian fellow.
Satya.
Thanks. Basically, if you look at what he did with Microsoft, he completely changed an organization that was terribly embedded in the old traditional way of working, and he was able to change it through a mindset change and through a area of using the tools and techniques that I talked about here. And it has worked marvelously well. If you look at Microsoft 4 years ago and where it is today, it is in a completely different headspace. Exactly the same thing with Google. You know, it was heading downhill, and how they have rejuvenated. These companies are not by accident. They are actually by design. They have it worked into their DNA to do exactly this type of what was good enough today is not going to be good enough for tomorrow. And they're the ones that are going to come through this pandemic in excellent shape. I mean, Amazon is just flying. So yeah, they might, you know, Airbnb is going to have a harder time, but it has an easier time coming back because it actually has very few assets, etc. So if you look at hospitality, where we would expect it to grow would be in that area, in the areas of Airbnb, of the Ubers of this world, or in the case of ourselves, it would be Grab. These are online-based businesses that have very few assets and therefore easily come out of a situation like ours. So those are the areas that are going to come. And we already have examples of organizations that are built to be, I wouldn't say pandemic, but have an ability to handle complexity at a level that 99.9% of all organizations do not have.
Right.
Now, most of these are run by Indians, so there we
go.
Yeah,
right.
Cultural element in there too.
Okay. That's a good one, then.
Right, Ravin. So Ravin, you have anything to add?
That's right. What Doug said is correct. There are organizations who manage to, corporates who manage to gain huge opportunity and profit out of this current situation. In fact, most of the billionaires have increased their wealth, not lost, increased their wealth by 19% over this crisis, especially pandemic. But those are the leaders who had found opportunity out of this crisis. 10% or 20% will actually find opportunity out of crisis. 90% will go down. You see? So those who are selling masks, doing vaccine, doing online e-commerce, and those softwares that helps on the platform business, Zoom and online learning, all that going to make money, definitely. So we can look at these leaders as done well in the crisis time. That is opportunity presenting to them. But the balance 90% going to lead themselves or need to manage themselves out of this crisis, this challenging time. And that's also leadership. It's not just becoming successful and surviving needs leadership, right? Making sure your family come out of this 3 years of suffering. It takes a lot of courageous leadership. And for me, leadership in crisis time is very challenging, and that's where you really see the true color or true nature of that leader. Okay, so the question was, can you name a leader who really surfing this storm challenges now? Actually, I'm going to go against the current. I'm going to swim against the current and tell you something very controversial. It's going to be very unconventional. But the guy who's actually leading all three situations, VUCA storm that I mentioned, IR industry technology revolution, military and economic geopolitical competition, global scale pandemic, the guy who's actually leading now successfully out of this is President Donald Trump. Most people will not agree. Give him another 1 year, we will see the result. And what he's doing, actually going to transform the new world. A lot of things that he is doing, actually going to go against the norm, against the conventional thinking of the United Nations, WHO, and all these corporate thinkers. And in fact, the new world that we are being promised out of this crisis after 2022 will be very much emerging from this man's way of doing things. I don't want to argue about this. I just want to go against the current. Yeah.
All right. I think Mr. Revin, anything that involves Donald Trump will warrant a separate session by itself. Probably there's something that we can explore
very controversial
in the next coming session. But just to round it off, Doctor, maybe you can lend your insight on this topic. Any women, role models who seem to be doing a good job in, going against the current, as Revin puts it?
I can't name anybody, but I think you will be aware that there are lots of memes, where husbands actually, make fun of women, their wives, and say, this is that, and that kind of a thing. But actually, these memes actually mean a lot of things. It tells you that women are doing a lot of things, right? And most frontliners are women. So, doctors, etc. So I can't name a particular person, but all women who have put their lives, in terms of, giving medical, aid, giving, even the, garbage bin collectors, everyone, okay, our babysitters, we really need them. And these essential service providers.
Just a quick one on that. There is actual proof that the countries that are doing the best are all ruled by women.
Thank you, Doug.
It's true. I mean, look at New Zealand, look at Germany, look at Switzerland, look at Iceland, look at all of the top ones that have been able to manage the pandemic, get it under control, and get have actually been women.
And less death among women as well.
Yeah, and then we can go back to our famous Donald Trump and Bolsonaro and others. All the right hand, macho males have been a complete and utter disaster in this pandemic. Just Modi, etc. You name them. The machoism is a killer, and the female touch has been absolutely essential.
Thank you.
This is true.
Thanks.
I'm not making this up.
Thanks, Doctor. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Mr. Revin. Thank you to the panel for the insightful views and wonderful sharing. these things are quite rare. You don't get, this kind of insights in 1 hour sittings. A lot of thinking that I think our entrepreneurs needs to be doing times to come. And thank you again to the audiences who have so patiently waited. We have exceeded the time, but nevertheless, we still managed to hold the crowd and very insightful questions. I hope the responses and the session itself managed to benefit you. So with that, I would like to once again thank everyone, and till the next session, we hope to come back with another insightful topic for your benefit. So till then, signing out, my name is Gopal and from Gopio Business Council. See you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
See you.